Hello and a warm welcome to the latest edition of the Hillingdon Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust podcast. I am Jonathan Lowe from the communications team, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Alex Porter today, who is Head of Therapies here at the Trust. Alex is here to talk about his role, what sort of services and support therapies offer to staff and patients, and plenty more. So firstly, Alex, thank you very much for coming on today's podcast. Can you just start us off by introducing yourself and just telling us a bit about the work that you do here at the Trust?
Yes, morning, Jonathan. So I'm Alex. I'm Head of Therapies, and I've been in post now for about a year. So we have several different aspects of the therapy service, including occupational therapists, physiotherapists, dietetics, speech and language therapists, as well as looking after the audiology services, not one of the therapies, but sits within our teams as well. And so as allied health professions, we help support throughout many areas of the hospital and in the community, in both our inpatient, outpatient and community settings as well.
Okay, and what would you say you enjoy most about your role?
I think generally working with all the staff and all the different people, I think we've got a really varied group of people who are always really enthusiastic, and I think the nature of the reason people went into this role, I think they want to give something back and help patients develop and be able to do the things they want to do. And I think it's fantastic to see how dedicated our staff are, and in terms of being able to help provide that energy and enthusiasm for our patients, and that's certainly what I enjoy in my role.
Excellent. And you say you've been here a year now. Did you have a background in therapies, or is it something that you've come into relatively recently? Or
Yep. So I'm a physiotherapist by background, and have worked in the trust for many years, although just moved into this role over the last year. So I still like to keep up some of my clinical work outside of my working hours, but it's nice to do something a bit different and a bit broader at the moment as well.
sure. And just finally on your role, do you have a typical a day that you go through, or is every day so varied that it's
typical
difficult?
day. No, there's no typical day. Lots of variety, which I think keeps it interesting. Apart from trying to keep me motivated through drinking lots of cups of tea, every day is a little bit different, which is good.
Lovely. So you mentioned briefly before we went on this podcast about some sort of questions that we're going to go through, including last year's staff survey. So therapies were keen on acting on the feedback that was provided. So can you just tell us a bit about what you did?
Yeah, so we were well aware that obviously the staff survey results come out, and that historically we might not have done as much with that as we could have done. So we worked really closely with our HR business partner to drill down into some of the data that we actually received around therapies, to make sure we could focus in on some areas where we as a service didn't score as high on as other areas of the trust, or comparison to other trusts as well. And so along with my service leads, we identified 3 main areas that we didn't score as well on, including we are flexible, we're safe and healthy, and we're recognised and rewarded. And we checked these things across with some of the staff to see if they felt they were the areas that we wanted to focus in on. And I think it overwhelmingly came back with yes, that was the areas that they felt that we could develop and move and improve a little bit more. So we're trying to work out what we could best do to try and help influence some change in these areas, and decided that we wanted to hold some listening events for staff so we could drill down into a bit more detail around those topics. So we basically organised several different listening events so that every member of staff, clinical and non-clinical across all bandings, could attend a meeting to raise their thoughts and opinions and views around those particular topics.
Okay, and obviously they are quite broad topics, aren't they? It's not something that's going to be fixed overnight, but I guess it's a case of keeping that cooperation and communication going with the staff to gradually change things over time.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we weren't expecting to change it overnight, but I think it's just to start that conversation and see what areas we could develop, and really start at the beginning and build on it.
And in your opinion, I guess why was it important to set up listening events, and why was it done face to face?
Yeah, so although we gathered some of the information from the staff survey around particular themes, because all the information that's given is confidential, and how it's grouped together, it's difficult to pick out some particular bits. Also, because of how some of the comments are shared, lots of bits are anonymized or sort of redacted, so you can't actually see the full level of detail that you might want to. So obviously, we also, without wanting to breach anyone's sort of confidentiality with it, we wanted to make sure that we had an option for people who were able to raise things and talk it through, but also give people that anonymous option as well, so that they could feedback in a different way. And I think we wanted to make sure that really everyone had a voice within it and an opportunity to speak up in a non-judgmental way. So we also set up a Mentimeter so that people could provide their comments back anonymously throughout the session, and we could reflect in real time on some of those, as well as those people that were able to actually have the confidence to talk up. So following all the sessions, we collect all the data into themes and actions. And then the leadership group proposed these actions back to the staff for comment and suggestion, to make sure that we were really working collaboratively with all members of staff. And then these were all agreed and worked on as smaller working groups, including staff that were interested in working in those particular areas. And we recently fed back on how we'd actually gotten on from doing some of this from the back end of last year, and have completely completed 7 of the 15 actions, with all of the other 8 actions are currently ongoing. So I feel we've made some really good progress with that. And I think the last part of the question was, why do we want to do this face to face? I think we're certainly used to moving into a more sort of digital world and everything on Microsoft Teams, but we're well aware that not every member of staff has got access to a computer in a confidential space. We wouldn't necessarily expect staff to jump on their mobile phones to be able to go on it. And I think it was really important just to have that interaction as well. And I think it's that networking and hearing how other people feel around this generated more discussion. So I think it was important to do it face to face, but we did also have an option to run this on Microsoft Teams for anyone that wasn't able to attend in person on the day.
Okay, excellent. And have you had much feedback from staff since you've had these events and in these meetings?
Yeah, so the overall feedback from staff was pretty positive. There were lots of comments from staff that they were grateful to be involved in the process and that we hadn't done something like this before, so that was quite nice. And an acceptance that some of these things do take time to put in place and to change, so that we weren't able to change things overnight. I was also really pleased to see that in this year's staff survey results, we had a greater response rate, which may be in part due to people feeling more engaged in the process. So it's not perfect, but I think it's, as I said, it started that conversation, and I think it's areas for development. We've also offered the opportunity for staff to give feedback on the process for last year, so that should we be able to replicate that this year, we can try and make some amends and make it more fitting to what their needs are, really.
Okay, and in terms of next steps, I guess it's implementing these eight actions that you mentioned.
Yeah, so we're finishing off on some of those actions, and then what we want to do is look at how we can repeat that further for this year. So whether we want to run it in exactly the same format, or whether we want to make some adjustments, whether the same themes come up as they did last year, whether there's different things that we want to work on. And that in itself might generate slightly different actions for this year that we need to look to try and address. It was also really conscious that we didn't want to wait just for a yearly cycle of receiving feedback and then working on it, and we wanted to provide something in a bit more real time. So we have had a review of our sort of meeting structure, and have now set up a 4 times a year all staff meeting, which I think gives that opportunity to hear people's views in real time, as well as setting up a suggestion box. So we've now got a virtual suggestion box that is live all the time, where staff can either click on the link or use the QR code to provide any sort of comments, ideas, suggestions, and it has the option for them to either put their name next to it, so we can actually feedback and have that conversation with them, or to put something through anonymously as well. And all of those comments are discussed at our monthly AHP board meeting with all the service managers, and that then following a discussion of that, we can feedback those themes through staff's individual team meetings. So it allows us to continue listening outside of that staff survey environment, and I think which is really important in able to, one, engage with staff and make sure staff feel involved in the process, but two, feel that we can actually address the concerns that are being raised as well.
Yep. And can you go into any detail about what was, one of these actions that you were talking about, or just an example of what you are planning to do?
Yeah, so we've one of the actions we had was around sort of reward and recognition and making sure that we were being more visible in showing off the stuff that's going on. I'm well aware, having come into the role, that I wasn't aware of what every team was working on or some of the good things we're doing, and so we're trying to work really hard in making sure we're raising some of that so that everyone's aware. So whether it's an individual that's completed a master's module or whether it's a staff member that's completed a project in their team, how we can show off some of those things. And we've had some great work recently around some career day work with potential students, and I think it's showing how that can be done and that then it can be replicated by others. So I think that's one of the things we have kind of put in place that we're still developing. And the other area is around flexible working. So there's lots of views on how we can be more flexible, and although obviously the majority of our staff are clinical and need to be here face to face, what aspects of their role could potentially be done from home, for example, things like the e-learning, and whether we can set up ways of enabling that to happen. So one of the actions that we're still ongoing at the moment is around having a flexible working group, which is looking at all the different areas of flexible working and whether we can make some recommendations from the therapy service that could go in conjunction with the flexible working policy that the trust has. So not to recreate the wheel, but just to add some recommendations for us as a service that might be a bit bespoke for those individuals involved.
Okay, excellent. And just finally then, if any other teams kind of wanted to do something similar, are you the best person to get in contact with, I assume?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've set up some brief performers of templates and things that we used for doing it. It's probably by no means perfect, but I think it's a really good starting point. And if anyone wants to get in touch, then obviously they can contact me directly, and I'm happy to talk through the process we took and share those documents as well.
Right, just to be clear, are you best on email or Teams call, or
either email or Teams? Yeah, it's great.
Okay, excellent. Great. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to the podcast to Alex? We covered quite a lot there.
And
it's all good.
I think it's just, if anyone else takes this on and develops it further, would be interested to see how it's gone and how we can constantly look to improve what we do as well. So yeah, thank you for your time today.
Yeah. Have you got a time scale of when these actions are all kind of going to be in place at all, or is it just
hopefully as soon as possible? But
yeah, okay.
It's always challenged depending on how busy the site is and the other pressures that come up. But we do make sure we bring it up at regular meetings, so we are holding ourselves to account to achieve these as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Alex, for coming on today's podcast. Hope you've enjoyed taking part. We'll be back with another podcast very soon, so keep an eye out for that on Buzzsprout or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are listening and want to get involved in a future podcast, just email thh-tr.communications@nhs.net. Thank you very much indeed for listening today. And until next time, goodbye.